I'm Murray Aiken, Executive Director of the IQVIA Institute for Human Data Science, and I'm here today with my colleagues Michael and Alex to give you a brief overview of our new report, Global Trends in R&D 2025. This is one of the Institute's 4 major annual trend reports. It includes 75 exhibits over 90 pages, and it's produced as a public service without external funding. And we hope it does contribute an evidence base that is useful to all stakeholders with an interest in innovation and healthcare globally. We've subtitled this year's report, Progress in Recapturing Momentum in Biopharma Innovation. And that's a theme that comes across throughout the report, whether it be in the context of R&D funding, clinical trial starts, their complexity and duration, success rates, and new drug approvals and launches, or the use of productivity enablers to improve efficiency. We recognize that the innovation ecosystem has evolved and expanded over the past 5 years through the pandemic, the geopolitical disruptions, technology advancements, investment bumpiness. At the same time, that scientific discovery and understanding of disease has also been progressing in parallel, and our report covers all of this. First, I want to take you through some of the research highlights, starting with R&D funding. When we look at the biopharma funding levels over the past 10 years, we see the heights that were reached in 2020 and 2021, followed by that steep decline in 2022. We're now back on track with funding levels, particularly with follow-on fundings that helped bring the 2024 total to just over $100 billion. There's still bumpiness in funding for early stage companies, that's for sure, and IPO activity remains muted, but the rebound in 2024 is significant, and it does speak to a positive outlook for the sector. We also saw an increase in M&A deal activity, specifically in the $1 to $5 billion range, which doubled in number and value over the prior year. And even as the lack of very large deals brought the total M&A deal value down in 2024. We also note in the report the rise in deals involving China headquartered companies, as well as AI-related deals. The large pharma cohort of 15 global companies, they increased their commitment and investment in innovation too, and reported $190 billion in total expenditure in 2024. This includes acquired in-process R&D. It includes some write-downs and impairment related to R&D programs, as well as investment in new and ongoing development activity. The total exceeded 25% of these companies' total revenues, and that's a historical high level, and does reflect how these corporations have intensified their focus on innovation over the past decade.
Industry sponsors of clinical trials started 5,318 trials in 2024. That's coincidentally very close to the 5,316 in 2019, but down from the peak in 2021 when it was 6,432. Much of that peak was driven by disruptions related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and there were more later phase trials than earlier phase trials in the more recent years, and a different mix of sponsor companies and therapy areas compared to 5 years ago. If we look at the headquarters of companies, China has risen from 5% of trials 10 years ago to 30% in the past 2 years. US headquartered companies started the most trials with 35%, while Europe dropped to 21%. And while there has been a shifting in the headquarter location of companies driving that trial activity, there's also been a shift in which countries have sites included in trials, which is also discussed later in the report. For China headquartered companies, they have been running 83% of their trials only in China, illustrating that the increased trial activity has a domestic focus rather than solely international. In terms of the therapy area focus of clinical trials, the top 4 therapy areas, oncology, neurology, immunology, and cardiovascular, represented 71% of trial starts across all phases. COVID-19 has slowed to just 75 trial starts, having peaked at 783 back in 2020 in the earliest part of the pandemic. There were a range of other areas with smaller numbers of trials, cell and gene therapies, mental health, infectious diseases, as well as a notable jump in activity in obesity with 173 drugs in active trials and around 100 new trials started in 2024. These trends in trial activity lead us to look at which medicines are emerging and launching as novel drugs. There were 65 novel active substances launched in the world in 2024. That's well above the pre-pandemic levels, but below the 2020, 2021 peak when they were 81 and 92 new drugs respectively. 2024 had 25 oncology drugs, 9 neurology, 7 each for hematology and endocrinology. And the hematology area had 3 gene therapies for sickle cell, beta thalassemia, and hemophilia. Not every medicine reaches every market. And the US leads with 273 new drugs over the last 5 years and 48 in 2024, including 28 of those which were first-in-class innovations. The major European countries, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the UK, had 204 launches in that last 5-year period. And of the US launches, 110 have not yet reached Europe. And only 14 of the European ones have not yet reached the US. So there's a little bit of a different set of medicines in each geography. China is now the 3rd largest geography in terms of global drug launches, with 188 in the last 5 years, which is significant, but it's also a fundamental change that's been going on for the last 5 or 10 years. 40% of those China launches in the last 5 years were only in China, suggesting that innovation and trial activity are still more domestically focused, as noted. Still, the time lag from global launch to China has dropped from a median of about 10 years between 2010 and 2014 to 3.7 years in the last 5 years for those global drugs that do reach China. And they're getting there much faster. Speed is also a factor in the US. When we looked at from first patent filing or first human trials to launch, that sort of development time frame, the median was 14 years for drugs launching in the US in 2024. And that's up a little bit from some prior years, and also suggests there are significant variations for products with different kinds of expedited review or regulatory pathways, or different types of medicines with rare or orphan designations and other features, with lots of detail to better understand what could facilitate and optimize drug development quality and speed.
Moving on to R&D productivity and clinical development productivity in particular. This, of course, continues to be a topic of great interest to trial sponsors and industry analysts. To examine this topic in a clinical development program context, where a program is defined as a unique combination of investigational drug and indication, we combined a range of program and clinical trial parameters within an overarching clinical program productivity index. We found that despite clinical productivity having declined over the long term, 2024 saw a year-on-year improvement driven by an increase in program success rate, despite increases that we saw in trial duration. Trial complexity remained essentially flat in recent years, although its underlying components were variable. And we describe this variability further in our report. Turning briefly to program success, we saw that the overall increase in 2024 was driven by an improved phase 3 success rate specifically, which reached 59% last year, following a historical low in 2023. Having said that, the long-term trend has been less positive, where success rates have declined across all development phases in the last decade. Trial duration has been acting as a brake on clinical development productivity, with enrolment times providing the greatest opportunity for improvement based on external data. However, as we discuss further in the report, lengthening enrolment times that were seen between 2021 and 2023 stabilised in 2024 at a median of just under 16 months. And alongside this, we also note the sum of between trial intervals across an average R&D program also stabilised in 2024, having almost completely recovered from a pandemic-driven peak seen in this metric in 2022. Of course, there are a wide range of dynamic external ecosystem factors that are currently facing trial sponsors, and While some of these create opportunities for the life sciences sector, they're also resulting in high degrees of pressure and uncertainty. With these complex external factors in mind, life science companies are employing a wide range of productivity enablers in order to impact key efficiency levers: speed, success rate, and cost. Many of these are discussed in the report, but some notable highlights include that we've seen a stable flow of new clinical trial starts from artificial intelligence or machine learning focused companies. So it'll be very interesting to monitor those going forward and see how that translates into improved success rates. We've seen continued increasing use of novel trial designs. And in terms of real world evidence and real world data, we've noted that there were 51 FDA approvals that were explicitly dependent on real-world evidence in the last 10 years, including 5 in 2024. Opportunities certainly remain, however, with remote, virtual or decentralized trials having returned to pre-pandemic levels, for example. So that suggests that there's still untapped opportunity there to capitalize on learnings from the pandemic.
I know this has been a quick overview. We've run through a lot of highlights from the research. We've covered a lot broadly around these 5 key areas. We do encourage you to download the report and read it in full. It is available on our website, or you can find it by scanning this QR code. And to keep up with all of the Institute's activities, please do join our mailing list. Thank you for your time and interest today, and we look forward to further future opportunities to share our research with you. Thank you.